Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my favorite fantasy romance books that feature dragons. Alright guys, so similar to many of you, I recently finished Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros and immediately started craving books that featured dragons. So I compiled a list of some of my favorite fantasy romances that feature either dragons, dragon shifters, or wyverns, and I am so excited to talk about these books with all of you. Now, I have done this video in the past, so I will leave that in the cards and the description, but I have read a lot of fantasy romances that feature dragons since then, so I'm very excited about this part 2. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new book as content. You can also check out my Instagram, Goodreads, and Patreon, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these dragon romantasy books. But before we get into the dragon recommendations, I do want to give a special shout out to Novel Wicks. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Novel Wicks is a bookish candle company that specializes in bookish candles. They all have a wood wick that makes a really nice crackling sound as you're burning them, and then all of the candles are topped with glitter. So I feel like Novel Wicks is the perfect gift to give to your loved one on Valentine's Day, so definitely check them out. And you can use my code HF10 to save 10%. Alright guys, so I feel like I have to start off with Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Now if you're watching this video, there is a very high likelihood that you have already read this book and have some very strong opinions. I will say, I absolutely love this series. I do think it is slightly overhyped, but it is just an enjoyable time. I love the characters, I love the dragons. It's very accessible, it's a very easy read, and it's great if you're new to romantasy and wanting to try out the genre. So if you have not picked this up yet, I highly recommend. I do have very strong feelings on book 3 that I will get into in a live show that is actually taking place on the 16th of February. So a few days after this video posts, so definitely check that out. I'll leave all the information down in the description below. But overall, I still think this is an amazing fantasy romance series. If you are unfamiliar with the plot, we are following Violet Sorrengail, who grew up believing that when she came of age, she would join the Scribe Quadrant. Instead, when she comes of age, her mother tells her that no daughter of hers is going to become a scribe. Instead, she is going to have to go to Dragon Rider University, also known as Basgiath War College, where she will hopefully survive long enough to claim a dragon, gain magical abilities that she will then use to defend her people. And it's really just following Violet and her journey through this college. And once again, I absolutely love it. So highly recommend. If you've been on the fence, I definitely think it's worth giving a shot. And next up we have A Fire in the Sky. Now I just finished this book. This is actually the book that inspired this entire video because I was just thinking about this book and I'm still really having trouble forming my thoughts. But I think I ended up giving this a 3.75. This was unlike any other fantasy romance book I have ever read. It does have a lot of the familiar romantasy tropes. I just never had any idea where this book was going. And in the end, I am still unsure what happened. It was a lot. But anyway, if you're unfamiliar with A Fire in the Sky, we are following Tamsin. And when Tamsin was a baby, she was found by the king and the queen, who decided to raise Tamsin as their own daughter, besides the fact that she will be the only daughter that receives physical punishment. So anytime one of the natural-born princesses were in trouble, Tamsin would be forced to take their punishment in front of them. So she's known as like the royal whipping girl. Anyway, Tamsin is very protective of her sisters, but she's lived a very rough life because who would want that as a life? There's still some like debate if this is actually like historically accurate or not. I am very interested, so I'm gonna do some more research. Either way, Tamsin has just been trying to get by. Then one day she finds out that there is this warrior who is going to marry one of her sisters, and her parents tell her, actually, we're going to disguise you and we're going to have him marry you because we don't want to give up one of our daughters and you're like our daughter, so it'll be fine. It was not fine. So once this scheme is kind of unmasked and the wedding takes place and the main guy realizes that he has been tricked, he is obviously very upset by this. and it's their romance. So the warrior she marries is named Fel, from what I remember. So it's very much like an arranged marriage, hate to love, but also there's dragons. So dragons used to exist in this world. Also, so did witches, and they've now slowly started to be killed off. So there's really none left in the world, or at least that's what they think. And the story goes from there. So there is a lot going on in this, like I said. There's also a character that very much felt like he was based off Kristen Cole from House of the Dragon. So many similarities. But overall, if you've read this, what did you think? Because I'm still not sure if I actually enjoyed this or I was just so surprised by everything that went down in this book. Also, I will say the audio, not my favorite. However, I did get used to it after a while. This has a very historical feel to it, especially the beginning. So once you kind of get used to the writing, I feel like I didn't mind the audio narration nearly as much. But with that being said, just let me know if you've read this, what did you think? And next up, we have Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This was one of my top reads of last year. If you have not read this yet, highly recommend. It is so unbelievably good. In this story, we are following Elowyn, and when Elowyn was born, she ended up bonding with 5 dragons. Now, there was a prophecy that if this was to happen, there was a chance she would destroy the kingdom, and her father takes this prophecy very seriously. So he ends up locking Elowyn up in the dungeon and separates her from her dragons. Now, she is able to eventually escape, but she has to leave her dragons behind, which is very painful for Elowyn. So years go by, she's now started kind of like a secret kingdom, and she is still longing for her dragons. So when her father's enemy, a commander, ends up showing up and says, hey, let's try to get your dragons back, she agrees, and together with a few other friends, they are going to perform a heist to get back her dragons. And there's definitely some really epic, like Game of Thrones moments in here that I really enjoyed, specifically towards the end of the book. It was so good. But I will say my one critique of this is there's not nearly as much dragon as I would enjoy from like the cover of this book. I just thought dragons were going to be like a very focal point of this story, and unfortunately they really don't come in till the end or like late middle of the book. So just know that going in. However, I do think this sequel is going to be full of dragons, which will be awesome, and I cannot wait for the second book to drop via audio. And this next book is a bit of a stretch. So we have The Wraith King by Juliette Cross. So in this story, we are following Una, who is a light fae, who in order to save her people, she agrees to marry Gallia, who is the king of the dark fae. So it also has an enemies, like kind of hate to love arranged marriage trope that I've been really loving lately. It seems like most of the books I've read so far this month kind of have that trope. But if you heard that entire plot synopsis and you're wondering where are the dragons, the main Dark Fae, MMC, he does ride a dragon, and he is one of the only Dark Fae to be able to do that. So it's like very important. Also, Una is able to connect with the dragon at some point. It's part of her like magical abilities. So there is a dragon in this. It isn't as prominent as in the other books I'm going to talk about. But still, if you're looking for a dragon, but you also want to read a dark fantasy romance that has a little bit of the captor-captive vibe, highly, highly recommend. And next up, we have Heart of Fire by McMaster. This is actually following a dragon shifter or a Drekkie. So in this story, we're following Freya, and Freya has heard tales about the Drekkie her entire life, but never believed them. That is until a Drekkie, or dragon, ends up stealing one of her rams. So she decides to follow it and get her ram back. Now, when she does this, the dragon shifter becomes very intrigued by Freya and decides, despite the fact that there are dragon hunters all over the area, to transform into his mortal form in order to try to woo Freya, and it's their romance. So while this was very enjoyable, I never did continue with the series, but I have heard really, really good things. This is also a very, very short read, and the audiobook was very enjoyable. So highly, highly recommend. And next up, we have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Now, I really need to do a reread of this before the sequel releases because it has been a hot minute since I've read this, and I forget a lot of like the little details. But in the story, we are following Wraith, and Wraith is an elite assassin who is part of a rebellion group. Well, she ends up being the target of a bounty hunter who is able to capture her, and she becomes one of the captives of the Guild of Nobles, who then hold her in a prison cell. Now, while all this is going on, we are also following Khan, who is searching for the remnants of a fallen dragon, and while he is collecting the shards, he stumbles upon a prison where he meets Rave, our other main character, and it is their journey to discover the answers about their lives, their past, and it is just such I don't want to say intense story, but there is so much going on. The writing is very unique. You will have no idea what is happening for probably the first 70% of this book. At least that is how I felt. But I will say this book was phenomenal. So I cannot wait for the second book to release. I might do a recap video. So let me know if that is something you guys would be interested in seeing. Not promising anything because I feel like a recap of this might be very difficult, but I am considering it. So let me know if that's something you're interested in, but I will definitely be rereading this soon. And next up, we have The Zodiac Academy by Carolyn Peckman and Susan Valenti, also known as the Twisted Sisters. So in this story, we are following two teenage girls, Darcy and Tori Vega, and they are living a very impoverished life. They really only have each other to depend on. Now, all that changes on their 18th birthday, where a vampire shows up on their doorstep and tells them that paranormal creatures exist. And not only that, they are actually Fae. And not just Fae, they are Fae royalty. And in order to gain their inheritance, they will have to attend the Zodiac Academy. And once they are able to pass, they will then become the Fae Queens. So when they agree and go to the Zodiac Academy, they find out that there are already 4 celestial heirs that are ruling the school, and they don't want to give up their title to these Vega twins. So I will say the first book is very much a bully romance, and then it kind of shifts and becomes unbelievably epic. I will say the romances are addictive, and there is a dragon shifter that is featured in this. He is actually one of my favorite characters. So if you are looking for a very addictive series that features dragons, highly, highly recommend. And I feel like this next series, a lot of people don't realize, does feature a dragon shifter. We have Reign of Shadows and Endings, and this is the first book in the Legacy series by Melissa K. Roehirch. Also, one of my favorite series just in general. I love this Romantasy. It is one of the only series that has given me the same butterflies that A Court of Mist and Fury did when I first read it. So if you have not read this, please pick it up. Just check trigger warnings. It does kind of rely on the captor-captive trope, so it's not going to be for everyone. That being said, if you're unfamiliar with this story, we are following Tessa. And Tessa is a Fae. And in this world, there are gods, and the gods gave the ruling power to the Legacy. So the Legacy rule over the Fae. Now, Tessa, like I said, is a Fae, so she grew up knowing that when she came of age, she would have to work in one of the 6 legacy houses. However, she is very surprised when she is chosen to become the primal source to the heir of endings. So what that means is she's going to be given these tattoos that connect her to this heir. And Tessa wants nothing to do with that. It's essentially a forced mating bond, and she does not want that pressure or that responsibility. She wants to be free. So it's very much Tessa kind of being forced into this role that she disagrees with, and everything that is surrounding that. Also just Tessa trying to vie for her freedom and her autonomy, and it's such a good story. So I will not say which character is the dragon shifter because that is a spoiler, but there are definitely hints, and I'm pretty sure the big reveal comes in the second book, or the end of this book. I honestly forget. Either way, if you're looking for a dragon shifter, this series really has a little bit of everything. We have vampire type characters, dragon shifters, gods, just anything you can imagine. So please, if you have not read this, it's so good. And the last 2 series both feature Wyverns. So first up we have a Flesh and Fire series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the prequel series to the From Blood and Ash series. They both feature Wyverns. This one just gets to it a little bit quicker. So in this story, we are following Seraphina, and Seraphina has been raised knowing that when she comes of age, she will marry or be the consort of the god of death, Nyktos. Now, when she does come of age, Nyktos ends up refusing Seraphina, so her life really goes downhill from there. Her family treats her very poorly, and eventually Nyktos makes himself known once again, and the story really gets going from there. So I have to continue reading this series. I've only finished the second book. I've DNF'd this third book quite a few times, but I have heard that it does get better, so I think I'm going to give this another try at the end of February. Let me know if you finish this series what did you think overall? Not finish it, I know it's not done yet, but if you are caught up on this series, what did you think overall? But either way, this does feature Wyverns, and one of them is one of my absolute favorite characters of both the From Blood and Ash and Flesh and Fire series. So definitely check this out if you haven't yet. And last up, we have Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I really debated including this on this list. However, there is a Wyvern in this series. He is one of my favorite Wyverns of all time. The characters in this are unmatched. So unbelievably good. I know there's a lot of thoughts regarding this series. It does feel very YA when you first begin. However, it does progress to feeling new adult. And by the time you get to Kingdom of Ash, the final book, it feels fully adult. And it's just so good. I've never read characters like I have in this series. They're just so fleshed out and you will fall in love. There's so many amazing romances. It's just amazing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the story, it is very hard to summarize the series because it is so long. But at the start, we meet Selena Sardathian, who is an assassin who has been captured and is now working as a slave in Endover. She is then taken to the castle where she is told that she can fight in these gladiator to the death games, and the winner will be the king's personal assassin, and that'll be a way for her to gain her freedom. So she agrees to kind of fight to the death, and while she's there are all of these secrets she starts to uncover and friendships made, and oh my gosh, it's so good. So please, if you have not read this yet, it is amazing. Alright guys, those are some of my favorite fantasy romance or romantasy books that feature dragons or wyverns. Please let me know down in the comments below if there was one that I did not mention that is your favorite. I love getting recs from you guys. And I'd like to say a special thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda, Leslie, Lotta, Jess, Kat, and Kylie. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.